Hey, am I okay? I mean, great business leaders think about that a lot. It's almost like taking an inward journey. But do I have the courage, the resilience, and the grit to dig deeper? Well, a good business coach can really help you with that.
You're listening to the Endless Customers podcast, brought to you by the team at Impact. Endless Customers is the proven system to become the most known and trusted brand in your market. If you want to start to learn the principles of Endless Customers and how you can implement them in your business, pick up a copy of Endless Customers, a national bestseller wherever books are sold. Ready to start implementing Endless Customers in your business? Talk to Impact about how our coaching program can help you implement Endless Customers to success. And now, onto the show. Here's your host, Alex Winter.
What do world-class athletes, top CEOs, and high-performing marketing teams all have in common? They work with coaches. Today, we're talking to Thomas Ahern, executive coach at Impact, about the role emotional intelligence plays in real business success and why coaching is often the difference between teams that talk about change and teams that make it happen. If you're serious about implementing the Endless Customer system, this is the part no one talks about: the mindset work, the reflection, and the leadership growth required to actually make it stick. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Hey, Alex. Good to see you, buddy. How's it going?
It's going well. It's going really well. How about you? How's everything?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. Things have settled down from my move, so we're ready to go.
Nice. Congratulations on the move. And also, this is your first time on the show.
I know. And I've seen the studio several times. I've been jonesing to get in and have the opportunity to have some conversation with you because you do such a great job in terms of the guests that you have on. Particularly that last one on Answer Rank. Holy smokes, that was really good with Patrick.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It's a team effort over here for sure. We've been chosen to have you on the show. So I think the feeling's mutual because you have a wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to emotional intelligence and it comes to coaching and it also comes to running businesses. So I can't wait to just roll up our sleeves and get into it, get our hands dirty.
Let's see what happens.
Awesome. So can you just set the stage for people who maybe don't know who you are, a little background and what you do here at Impact, just so people can get a sense of what's up?
Yeah, believe it or not, I started my career as an educational psychologist. And one of the first things I studied was, Gardner's 8 forms of intelligence. That is part of the conversation today. So it's kind of interesting to me that when you reached out to talk about it, it was sort of like my sweet spot. But started off as an educational psychologist and then took a position for the summer because as an educational psychologist, you have to find a job for the summer because they're 10-month contracts.
That's right.
So I took a job as a therapist in a private psychiatric hospital and ended up spending 10 years there, not only doing therapy, but eventually starting programs and working in the community to build access and capacity for communities to support young people with social, emotional, mental health issues. Ultimately moved through the process and got to the point where I had the opportunity to become the chief marketing officer for a 14-state mental health system. And we were really trying to change the game in terms of reducing the all-time levels of anxiety, depression, and suicide in the country by creating more access across the country and standardizing care and making it so that payers would pay and everybody had equal access and access to really good quality standards of care. But then I retired. I've been doing it for like 35 years. And I retired, came back to Connecticut where I raised my family and started another business with my wife around holistic sales consulting because we believed in the connection between wellness and sales and integrating that into your strategic perspective. Because if you didn't, the research was beginning to be evident that you were more likely to fail as a business if you didn't integrate wellness into the way that you were approaching the market and your sales and marketing. But then I got a call from Impact and Bob, and he said, "Hey, we love what you're doing. We like to do this kind of stuff too. Why don't we get together and have a conversation?" Which we did, and I realized that you guys were doing it a little bit at scale, and it was great to be able to partner with you and to be able to spread more of the kinds of stuff we're talking about. So to bring heart to organizations that are trying to implement Endless Customers was a part that Bob really embraced, and that's what kind of brings us here together today. So in a nutshell, that's my background. I've also been the senior VP of sales, so I've had the opportunity to start programs and grow programs and market programs, and at the same time learn how to do it with heart and humanness. Because in mental health, when it comes to sales, putting those two together is kind of a feels incongruent, right? So how do you do that? You got to do it with heart.
You got to do it with heart. Yeah. No, we definitely have a lot of alignment when it comes to the way that the company thinks and approaches sales and business and just morality in general to you. And I think it was such a great matchup, and you were such a great value add to the team because you have such a wealth of experience when it comes to emotional intelligence that you bring into the equation. And I think it's a mindset that leadership has here, but it's also a mindset that most of our clients that are successful with Endless Customers, their leadership has a similar vibe as well, or a similar wavelength to us. So can we talk a little bit about how emotional intelligence plays into the Endless Customer system and why it just elevates and pushes people that are implementing it to the next level when it comes to being successful?
I think what would be good is to just help our audience understand sort of, what is emotional intelligence. And so when you have that sort of definition, the different components of it helps people to sort of understand how it really impacts or can impact, or the potential is. So, if you really think about it in its most simplified form, as it's evolved from back when I first studied it, but initially it'd be like the difference between intra intelligence and inter. So one is like how well I understand my own moods, my own feelings, my own motivations, and how well can I manage those when they came up to help me make good decisions, as opposed to letting that stuff, rule me, if you will.
Yeah.
And then intra would be how well can I perceive or empathize and understand how other people are feeling? Can I step into their shoes? Can I really see things from their perspective? Now you can see how the better I am at that, probably the better I am at being able to read a room or run a meeting or seeing the decisions that I'm making, how they're impacting others, right? And when it comes to like things that are happening around me, the better I have access and language that identifies those feelings, and I can stop and be present to experience those, then I'm more likely to be able to respond in a way that's congruent with the way that I want to, or they're consistent with the core values that I ascribe to. So ultimately, you put that stuff together, and that's a very sort of simplified version of it. The data is pretty clear that you're ultimately going to make better decisions. People are going to perhaps like you more. They're going to respond to you better. You're going to run things better. And so that's why the people that are implementing Endless Customers, when they start thinking about how this relates to Endless Customers, because I'm not just implementing a tactic or a bolt-on thing, I'm actually transforming my company. And people have reactions and feelings and thoughts and all kinds of stuff, fears that you have to be able to navigate, because we're not putting on aluminum siding on the side of a house. We're actually impacting people's lives in the way that they go about their own journey of implementing their role in the company. Does that help?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there for me, because my wife says I'm very empathetic, and I sometimes personally will struggle with feeling other people's emotions so much so that it's hard to control how it affects me. Like if someone,
that's such a great point.
Yeah. Like, so if someone's upset on my team, it affects me, and then I can't do what I need to do until they're okay. And I have to help solve that. So like I struggle with some of that. But I think everyone has their own different struggles with either self-awareness or other people's issues. But I think to your point, it's just fascinating to take the time to stop and think about that and try to analyze where you stand.
I love your first point, because when I was, part of my role as a chief marketing officer, I was also responsible for admissions.
Okay.
And so when parents were calling us with their child who was out of control, looking for help, and my admissions people, who have to have empathy, but sometimes they would start having so much empathy that they would start thinking about the family and down the pipe, down the road, like, well, what is this going to cost you? And they would start to have too much empathy to the point where they were solving the problems for the family. Sometimes you have to sort of pull back from that. And that's having that intra-emotional intelligence to know, like, where's my boundaries? Can I set healthy boundaries? Can I not have ruinous empathy, it's called, where I end up like having too much? And so I think you make a good point. And it's great that your wife gives you that feedback, because that's really the only way we learn, is by being open to and non-defensive and having a growth mindset around accepting feedback. So that's really good that she tells you that, and you have the courage to be able to hear it.
Yeah, we keep each other honest. I'm very lucky that we have that relationship. But I also think it's a driving force here at Impact. I feel like from the top down, accountability is a big piece, but communication is also a big piece here. And that really helps push to have these conversations and to be self-aware and to also be empathetic to others. I also think one more step forward for our clients, when you think about endless customers, the system, we're trying to be super transparent and honest with potential customers. So it's really like breaking or disrupting the typical norms of your industry of trying to hide pricing or trying to do the smoke and mirrors, and really being aware of what they need, their fears, their worries, their doubts, their concerns, and addressing them, right?
Yeah. And it's awesome that you can, identify that. So as you're promoting something that's going to make them uncomfortable. I mean, it just happened to me just yesterday. We were on a call, and you have a business leader who is trying to make a decision to adopt endless customers while at the same time they're implementing a brand new CRM system in their company. And is that too much?
Yeah, that's a
to
lot.
do endless customers in a CRM implementation. If you've ever been through technology implementation, you know what a nightmare those can be.
Absolutely.
So as he's deciding, and we're almost like, well, maybe we should wait and we should do this after the CRM implementation in 2026. Because the reason we're doing the CRM now is because we know it's not going to do very well for the rest of the year, but in 2026 we'll be set ready to go. So I'm sitting there listening to him. I'm going, yep, that makes a lot of sense. And I could see how I love your empathy and your consideration and compassion towards your staff, and realizing this might be way too much to do all at once. Mm-hmm. But then we paused and we thought about it for a second, and I said, well, something for you to consider, Dan, is, boy, should we do the implementation now and do everything at once so that everybody can know that by 2026, we're going to be ready to go and that stuff will be done with. And now we have, the structure in place that lets us relax and move forward. And that's kind of like where we left it. But I think it was a good perspective for me to see the business owner having that level of consideration for his staff and what these implementations would mean. And at the same time, like, driving the core decision was what's right for the company, what's right for our staff. And so I could see that that's the kind of business owner you like to work with. It probably has a really high level of employee satisfaction and probably doesn't have a ton of turnover, because that is something he's turned on to and he considers and thinks about. Now, it's not the only thing, but it is something that makes the difference between people who are living a life of sort of achievements and outcome versus living a life of significance, where it transcends the outcome for the business beyond that to its impact on people and lives and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a great segue too. So from an emotional intelligence standpoint, how does coaching or having someone to keep you honest, how does that help leaders do exactly what you're talking about? Implement not just the endless customer system, but be aware of their team and how to create like a rising tide lifts all boats sort of situation? Well,
I guess I see it as more of in a sense, it comes from a sort of a servant leadership perspective. Like, I, as a leader, want to be more collaborative, and I want it to exist for the purpose of helping the people that I'm asking to do the work, to give them the resources they need to rise up and to feel like they're empowered. They have the resources, they're listened, they're understood. And I think that's where, business leaders who adopt a coach and can get that critical feedback or that objective observation to support them in their development of those skills, if they feel like they're lacking, can make a real big difference, because the evidence is pretty clear. I mean, those who employ a coach, those business leaders, because most of them do sales training, right? Everybody does training. But when you add coaching to the training, there's like a 22% increase in several different categories, whether they be performance or satisfaction or productivity, those kinds of metrics that most business owners are looking for, directly tied to training and coaching being hand in hand. And then it goes way beyond that. So you have those traditional metrics that sort of define business. But then you have to get into the stuff like, well, what's the value of having a confidential conversation with someone who's outside the organization that can talk to me about what kind of a boss am I? Or what kind of a father am I? Or how am I, being perceived by the organization? Those kinds of things where I can be challenged. I can challenge a business owner, say, is this really how you want to be thinking about that? What about this? I mean, there's just so many different opportunities that within those kinds of relationships can have such a huge impact on your sort of holistic functioning versus just being tunnel vision on an outcome that's business related, that's might win in the short term. You might meet that quarterly goal,
right?
But what's the long term? At what cost? That's really the stuff that drives me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up playing pretty competitive sports, and you were talking about like getting the tunnel vision, right? And when it comes to training and coaching, you can train in a certain stripe for sports, but you might be training the wrong aspects, and you need that outside coach to be like, hey, I'm glad you got that down, but you also need to do X, Y, and Z. And it can change the game. So that's really important to have that perspective.
Well, there's a researcher named Angela Ducksworth who wrote a book on grit. And she was trying to understand, like, what is the stuff that makes the Olympic athlete win and exceed higher than everybody else? And is it intuitively consistent? Because most people would say, what? Oh, you just have really great natural talent. Wrong. And that's not it. What she did was she did all this research over the years and wrote the book on grit. She found that it was real. Actually, the term is, I get it wrong all the time, but it's called deliberate practice.
Okay.
And that's the difference between those that achieve okay and those that win. Deliberate practice includes long periods of time of practice with a coach that provides you objective feedback and then continuously presses you to create goals, gives you additional feedback so that you can continue to practice the right things, because you can practice all day long. I mean, even in endless customers, that's why we coach people along. We give them feedback based on how they're writing or based on how their videos, what are their best practices. So we can give them that feedback to help create awareness around the blind aspects of the stuff that they're not seeing. The Johari window construct, which probably most of our audience is familiar with, but I've always loved that construct that, what area of my Johari window is the most blind and how do I fix that? Because the idea would be to reduce the blind aspects of my personality so that I'm more fully functioning and I can more aware of all of the different components of myself.
Right.
So I can be a better boss, better decision maker, et cetera.
So you coach and train a lot of companies, different industries, different facets. What are some common like tunnel vision moments or mindset blocks that you come across as you're in these calls and you're working with these companies?
It's pretty fascinating work, actually. But I guess I could boil it down to just at least probably the one that for me is the biggest, usually comes back to like fear. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, one, you're weak. If you have a coach, you're supposed to be able to do this stuff on your own, or that nothing's really broken, so I don't really need a coach either. I'm just afraid to be vulnerable and open for honest feedback. And just to expand on that for a second, that's what's really interesting. And the artistry related to coaching is being able to develop that rapport and having your own really good emotional intelligence about understanding where your business owner is coming from, what's their stuff, what's their fears, what's their goals, and developing a rapport and a relationship where it becomes so much trust is there, where we can have open dialogue and essentially have radical candor around so many topics that everything is on topic now. Everything is open and it's safe. And now we can look at those limiting behaviors or those limiting thoughts that are getting in the way of my ability to break through and do things better than what if I were to do them alone, I can do them better with somebody else. It's almost like a rocket fuel for your company, for your business goals, or your own personal and professional growth. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the mind just gets in the way and it takes a lot of courage. I say the same thing when you're going to implement endless customers. You're a courageous, bold leader, but it also means we have to live in it. If it doesn't live in us, it can't live through us.
That's well said. I think you're right about the fear piece too, where we want to look good. We want to present well. We don't, as humans, don't like to acknowledge. We're almost like trained from a young age to be like, oh, like that's bad. Let's only look at the positive and the good. But the beautiful moments and the teachable and learning moments where you really grow are in those messy moments when you fail and when you don't have things go quite right. And you can take a second to reflect and look at those pieces and really have the awareness to try to be better next time, right? Even though it's difficult, that's where the magic happens.
That's the transformational moments that we all take with us. And if we can establish ourselves in a relationship with a coach that can mentor us or coach us, I do differentiate the difference between training, coaching, and mentoring. Training, we're like teaching a specific skill over a time-limited period of time. Coaching, we're also doing a limited period of time, and we're looking for skill development, but we also take into consideration sort of the holistic picture. Mentoring is really different because there's no time limitation to that. And we're really using our life experience, and it's more about career and personal growth. A lot of times I think people don't understand what coaching even really means. And I think that's something in our sales process, we try to do that well. It's like helping, like, what are you signing up for here? And what does that really look like? And what is it going to take? And sometimes that can be scary. But we lean into the scariness because real business leaders, they're not afraid of being vulnerable. They're afraid of not growing. That's what's cool. So that's when you know you've got the right people, right? Like, okay, they lean right into the endless customer commitment to success. Even though if you were to read it, go, holy crap, I've got to do all this stuff. I got to transform the culture of my organization. And the answer is yeah. But when those leaders come back and say, oh my goodness, this speaks to me, and this is where I want this company to go, and I know what it's going to take. Now we've got a great partnership and the framework for a really great business relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're saying, and it's got me thinking. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Do you have a story or an example maybe that you could share of a business leader or a company that you've been working with that maybe was struggling to unlock something and you helped them break through with coaching?
Wow. Oh God, I got one hot on my tail. Yeah,
okay.
Business owner, but his son has been with the company for 20 something years as their number one salesperson.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, but you can just guess where this one's going. Even though he's number one salesperson, there's an immense amount of opportunity. And there's a couple other people on the sales team.
I was going to ask, how big is the sales team that we're? Yeah,
it's like 4 people on the sales team.
Okay.
And the CEO is acting as sales manager, which is often the case with some of the smaller size organizations. And it becomes increasingly evident, even though they're doing really good work, some self-service tools, they've done some really great work and seen some great results. Our challenge sometimes is like, we know there's so much more opportunity and we can help them so much more, but we see the limiting behaviors and we see the organizational challenges. And so in a nutshell, when I meet with the sales team, I can see that they're in sort of silos. There's not a lot of collaboration going on. And this person is doing this over here and this person is doing this over there. And even though one of the things that we do at Impact is we help to standardize, document, and have a consistent sales process that everybody follows, because we know it's not dependent on talent, it's dependent on the system. And then we can find where to utilize assignment selling in certain places that become automatic. This is the best process for the best outcome. And it still leaves some creativity for the salesperson to be a salesperson, but there are certain things we all do. Well, the son in this situation is undermining the process. And that's the way he's been doing it for decades. But the culture of the organization tolerates it. These are the kind of level challenging conversations. So I'm talking to this business owner who's trying to set his company up. He's 70 something years old. He wants to pull out and leave a sustaining, and he's very well respected in the industry.
But that's a tough conversation because there's layers to it, because it's not just his business and the sales team. It's a father and son dynamic as well. So there's a lot to unpack there. I can imagine that's difficult. Yeah.
So to cut to the chase, he can acknowledge and see what's going on, but at some point I have to help him understand that the lack of limits and boundaries with his son creates an unsafe environment and inconsistencies within the company that's impacting his other employees. And so by having sort of several of these conversations privately or with another leadership person in the room to help that person, because that person's also frustrated, we can have some conversations that normally wouldn't take place or just haven't taken place in decades. And so for me, it's like poof, it's like such a relief. People feel so much better that the ostrich is no longer. We're actually having the conversation about something that everybody's wanted to say but couldn't say. And leaders don't always get the right feedback because they're in that leadership role. They're the boss. And so people tell them what they want to hear a lot. So it's hard to trust anything. But when it comes from an independent person like me that they know is committed to their growth and the sustainability of their company, they're like, wow, I trust Thomas. And look at this observation. He's telling me I've got to make some change. And I didn't even think about the impact of how it's having on other people. So when we have the conversation, now he's coming around and he's like having these conversations, not just conversations like daddy, son, but he's writing stuff down and saying, hey, I'm establishing some outcomes and some expectations by certain dates so that we know this is going to move forward. And the organization, now the sales team is starting to interact more. There's more collaboration, pulling him forward a little bit, bringing him along. So we've got some momentum and continue to see some success, but I think they're right at the forefront of the potentiality of like breaking through to another level that they didn't even imagine before.
That's really cool. That's a great.
Does that help? Is that a good example?
That's a great story. Yeah, that's a great story.
Good.
But it also plays into team dynamics, because if you're on the sales team, here's my empathy piece coming out, right? Because I'm thinking if I'm a person on the sales team, you're going to go to the boss and say something about his son. That's a really hard spot to be in. And you have to be radically candid in those moments, but that's easier said than done. I know I personally would struggle if I was in a situation like that, trying to break through. So to have someone like you with outside perspective that can give an objective view at what's going on, it's certainly changing the dynamic. So, but this is a perfect segue into my next question. We hear this a lot where like people think Endless Customers is designed to help teams or companies that like have an issue or that like something's broken and it needs fixing. And that is true, but that's not always the case. What are other ways that Endless Customers can help companies that maybe are doing really good but want to go from good to great or excellent?
Well, I think that's it's almost a foregone conclusion that, whether it's an athlete, a business leader, a politician, anybody, we all need somebody that can provide us with authentic, real feedback, particularly if we have a growth mindset and we're always trying to get to that next level. I was training to do the 2019 Ironman. I didn't hire a coach because I got injured. I hired a coach because I had a dream and I knew I didn't know what I didn't know. And I'd never done an Ironman before and I never thought I could do it. I'd done multiple half Ironmans and other sprint and Olympic level stuff. But when my boss said, I said, I'm 220 pounds. My body cannot do an Ironman. He goes, no, we're doing it. So, you have to have a coach to sort of like help me understand what I don't understand. So if I didn't have nutritional help, if I didn't have, help analyzing my swim stroke a little better or my breathing, there's a good chance I would have made a lot of mistakes. I would have taken a lot longer to get ready. And although I might have made it through the Ironman, I probably wouldn't have made it through as well as I did. And I did avoid injury.
Which is huge. That's a big deal.
So I love that. You get injured, you're out. But for any business leader that's thinking about, I'm just going to do this in case, if something breaks, we kind of missed the boat. We said, there's an opportunity early on to demonstrate the courage and the fortitude and the commitment and dedication and discipline. That's the part that, I think separates people is, do I have the discipline to take this on a regular basis and create a routine that eventually feels more comfortable because this is just the way I do things now. Right. I understand it's difficult and it's uncomfortable, but like anything when it comes to growth, at first it's going to feel weird. I mean, the first time you were probably doing a podcast, you were probably like, oh my God, this is so weird,
It
but
was.
Now it's just who you are now, right?
100%. That's very relatable because I am always behind the camera and I went to film school. So I very much studied the art and tech of being behind the scenes and to be in the studio and having Austin really film everything and me being the subject matter expert or the host or whatever you want to call me. It was very uncomfortable. And if you go back and look at the first couple episodes, at least from my perspective, they're painful. And there's definitely been an evolution. That's been a really cool journey for me. And I'm certainly a lot better today than I was back then. And I'm sure a year from now, I'll be saying the same thing as you continue to do these things. It's just with practice, it's growing pains. They call it growing pains for a reason. It hurts a little bit, but it's a good hurt. It's rewarding. It's taking you to a place that has positive returns, in my opinion.
Just one last point in regards to what you just described. And I think this goes back to one of your questions earlier, like, well, why don't more people? Because like only 17% of business owners use a coach, but there are like 71 million coaches globally. And it's like a $31 billion industry. So something's working. But the thing for me is, and this, I personally can relate to this. I experienced a lot of success in my life. And at one point as chief marketing officer, I felt like I was at the top of my game. And I got to the top as far as I could get in terms of sales and marketing. I never really wanted to be a CEO because that's such a tough place to be. You're totally alone. And if you don't have a coach, I feel really bad for you. But as CMO, there's some common characteristics because you are the head of a lot of different departments and you're leading a lot of people, especially when you're a 140 $1 million company. You can experience a lot of success, but if you don't take the time and have the emotional intelligence to reflect on, am I okay? How am I showing up? Do I feel good? Am I jittered? Does all the stuff that I'm doing to make this, is it worth it? Do I feel good about what I've done? Am I integrated? Am I coherent? Is my brain and my heart aligned so that all the things that I do on a day-to-day basis to be successful, does it integrate with me so that I feel whole and good? And if I don't, and that's what CEOs should do when they're, and especially our smaller companies that are mid-sized companies that are trying to do a lot of different things all at the same time. They don't take the time to reflect on that stuff and integrate an approach to their life that has meaning and purpose and brings joy to them. Then it's almost in some ways kind of meaningful and hollow. And that's where, again, a good coach that provides good mentorship can help you to reflect on us and make the subtle changes. Maybe it's living maybe 30 seconds of gratitude when you wake up in the morning. I'm not saying everybody should do yoga or go on silent retreats, but maybe that's good too.
Right.
There are just different ways of integrating stuff that allows you to be in touch with yourself in a way that also it lives through you to the people that are surrounding you and help you have a business that really feels purposeful.
Yeah. What you just said is so important and it resonates with me. And I say that because CEOs, it is lonely at the top, but it doesn't have to be because you can have a coach. Yes. But the other piece that you said that really stuck out to me is you need to have confidence because your energy, when you're in a team meeting, your energy trickles down to every person in the company. So if you're discombobulated, if you're nervous, if you're jittery, that's going to distill throughout the whole organization. So how you come to those meetings is critical because that energy permeates through your whole company. So you really have to be mindful of that and find ways, whether it's yoga or whatever is going to help you be like the best version of yourself to come to those meetings correctly so that you can empower people versus scare people.
Yeah. And that feeds right into alignment day. So like when I go in to do alignment days, which are essentially the first part of your kickoff, it's really when we get the whole company together.
Yeah.
And we talk to them about the what, the why, and the how of how Endless Customers is going to impact them, the company, their brand, all that stuff. But I can tell in about, 10 minutes, right away, if this company or this, leader, and fortunately this doesn't really happen very often because we do such a great job on the front end of educating people and practicing what we preach around what they can expect. But when you're really looking at that next level down, like how committed is this company? How committed is this leader? In a short period of time, you can tell the difference between those that are living it, breathing it, and assimilating the theories, the practices, and the way, the messaging, the communication, all in a very short period of time because they're the ones that are willing to get out there on video. They're the ones that are integrating it into their daily huddles or their L10 meetings or their VTO. They're aligning their rocks, if you will, if you're familiar with EOS, with their Endless Customer focus areas. So it becomes the way, the system, the culture, the infrastructure has been built to include the support of making this thing go. That's a big ask. But it's also a big payoff when you do it because now you're really living and breathing it and it just feels effortless because this is just what we do. Now that I've built the synapses in my brain to
absolutely
to make it go.
No, absolutely. And we've seen it time and time again. It's so true. I couldn't agree with you more. We've had a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground today. And I really appreciate your time. But this is my favorite part of the show. I always ask this. What's the one thing for our viewers and our listeners out there, if they had to take one thing away from this conversation, what would you say that is for them?
The one thing, probably my favorite phrase of the whole conversation was that if it doesn't live in you, it can't live through you. And so every piece of this conversation, from emotional intelligence to coaching or what have you, you got to bring it in and live it. You can't be an external attached thing. You've got to take an inward journey and just see where it fits in its relationship to your core values so that when you're being it, people can feel it and they want to follow you. They want to do the thing because you're so inspiring and inspirational because it lives in you. And for me, that's how I've tried to live my career and my life. And so that's probably my one thing.
That's great advice. Really great advice. Thomas, thank you for your time and for being on the show.
Yeah, it was fun, Alex. I appreciate it. Hopefully you can use some of the episode.
I think so. Right? No, I think you're going to help out a lot of business leaders and just a lot of people in general out there. And I know I have some key takeaways here as well. And we're definitely going to have you back on the show again soon. So don't go too far. Okay.
Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you. And for everybody out there watching and listening, this is Endless Customers. I'm your host, Alex Winter. We'll catch you on the next episode.